The sound of her heels clicking against our hardwood floor had become the soundtrack to my humiliation. Each deliberate step toward the mirror, each careful adjustment of her dress, each spray of the perfume she never wore for me anymore, it all built into a symphony of betrayal that I'd been pretending not to hear for months. "David, have you seen my diamond earrings?" Melissa called from our bedroom, her voice carrying that particular tone of excitement she used to reserve for our anniversary dinners. Now it was for him. Always for him. I stood in the kitchen doorway, watching my wife of 8 years transform herself into someone I barely recognized. The black dress hugged every curve, the neckline plunging just low enough to be professional but memorable. She'd spent 40 minutes on her makeup, longer than she'd spent talking to me all week. "They're in your jewelry box," I replied, my voice flat. "Same place they always are." She emerged from the bedroom looking like a magazine cover, all glossy perfection and calculated allure. The woman who used to wear sweatpants to grocery stores and laugh at her own terrible jokes had become this polished stranger who scheduled her smiles like business meetings. "How do I look?" she asked, but she was already checking her phone, reading another message from him. Her lips curved into that secret smile I used to think was just for me. "Like you're going on a date," I said quietly. The smile vanished. "David, we've been through this. It's a business dinner. Richard is considering me for the regional manager position. This could change everything for us." "Us?" The word tasted bitter. "When's the last time Richard's wife joined these business dinners?" Melissa's eyes flashed with irritation. "Linda doesn't understand business like I do. She's content being a housewife. I have ambitions. And apparently Richard appreciates your ambitions enough to take you to Le Bernardin at 9 p.m. on a Friday night." She grabbed her purse, a new Coach bag I definitely hadn't bought her. "You're being ridiculous. This is my career we're talking about. This is my marriage we're talking about." For a moment, something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe, or the ghost of the woman who used to care about my feelings. But it died quickly, replaced by cold determination. "I can't say no to my boss about this date," she said, the words hitting me like a physical blow. "Your jealousy is pointless. Either you accept it, or I file for divorce. My career matters more than your insecurities." The honesty was almost refreshing. No more pretending it was just networking. No more elaborate stories about team-building exercises that somehow required expensive wine and intimate lighting. She'd finally admitted what we both knew. "And yes," she added, checking her reflection one last time, "I want to go." I watched her grab her keys, watched her walk toward the door that would take her to another man's arms, watched her pause at the threshold like she was waiting for me to beg, to fight for her, to give her the drama that would justify what she was about to do. Instead, I nodded slowly. "Okay, go." The surprise on her face was almost worth the pain in my chest. She'd expected anger, tears, threats. She'd gotten permission, and it clearly unsettled her more than any argument would have. "I'll be late," she said, softer now, like she was testing whether I'd changed my mind. "I know." The door closed behind her with a soft click, and I stood alone in our living room, surrounded by the life we'd built together. Wedding photos smiled down from the mantel, capturing a happiness that felt like ancient history. The couch where we used to watch movies together, the kitchen table where we'd planned our future over Sunday morning coffee. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I'd memorized but never called. Linda Hawthorne, Richard's wife of 23 years. The woman whose husband was currently driving my wife to an expensive restaurant where they'd hold hands over champagne and pretend it was about quarterly projections. My finger hovered over the call button. This would change everything. There would be no going back, no pretending this was just a rough patch in our marriage. But as I thought about Melissa's smile when she read his messages, about the way she'd started working late every night, about how she flinched when I tried to touch her, I realized there was already no going back. The phone rang twice before a crisp, professional voice answered. "Hello? Mrs. Hawthorne, this is David Chen. I'm Melissa's husband." A pause. "I see. What can I do for you, Mr. Chen?" Her tone was carefully neutral, but I caught something underneath it. Suspicion, maybe, or recognition. Like she'd been expecting this call. "I think we need to talk about our spouses," I said. Another pause, longer this time. "I think you're right. Where are they tonight?" "Le Bernardin. 9 o'clock reservation under Richard's name." "Of course it is." Her voice carried a weight of exhausted knowledge. "Mr. Chen, would you be available to meet for coffee tomorrow morning? I believe we have quite a lot to discuss." After we hung up, I sat in the dark living room, listening to the silence that had become my companion. Somewhere across town, Melissa was laughing at Richard's jokes, letting him pour her wine, letting him touch her hand across the table. But somewhere else, his wife was making plans. I thought about the woman I'd married, the one who used to steal my hoodies and leave little notes in my lunch bag, the one who cried at dog videos and insisted we adopt a stray cat she'd found in the rain. That woman had disappeared gradually, replaced by someone who calculated every smile and measured every conversation against its potential for advancement. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Jake. "Want to grab a beer? Sarah's having a girls' night." I stared at the message, realizing I hadn't told anyone what was happening. Pride, maybe, or shame. The humiliation of admitting that my wife preferred another man's company to mine, that I'd become an obstacle to her happiness rather than a partner in it. "Rain check," I typed back, dealing with some stuff at home. "Everything okay?" I started to type "fine," the automatic response that had become my default. Instead, I deleted it and wrote, "Not really, I'll call you tomorrow." The house felt enormous and empty around me. I walked through rooms that held 8 years of memories, touching surfaces that Melissa had chosen, looking at pictures of trips we'd taken when we still enjoyed each other's company. In our bedroom, her rejected outfits lay scattered across the bed. Apparently, the first 3 dresses hadn't been quite seductive enough for a business dinner. I found myself in my home office, staring at the computer where I managed IT systems for a mid-sized accounting firm. Steady work, decent pay, but nothing that impressed at cocktail parties. Nothing that made wives' eyes light up when they introduced their husbands to their colleagues. Richard Hawthorne, on the other hand, was a regional vice president at a major consulting firm. Silver-haired, expensive suits, the kind of confident handshake that opened doors and closed deals. I'd met him exactly once, at Melissa's company Christmas party, and watched him work the room like he owned it. Watched him pay special attention to my wife, complimenting her insights and promising to keep her in mind for opportunities. I should have seen it then. The way she glowed under his attention, the way she started mentioning his name in casual conversation, the way she began dressing differently for work, but I'd trusted her. Believed her when she said ambition was driving her changes, not another man's hands. My laptop chimed with an email notification. Melissa checking in from her date. Working late with Richard on the Morrison account. Don't wait up. Love you. Love you. 2 words that used to mean everything, now just punctuation at the end of a lie. I closed the laptop and walked to the window, looking out at our quiet suburban street. Normal houses filled with normal families dealing with normal problems. Mortgage payments and parent-teacher conferences and arguments about whose turn it was to take out the trash. Simple problems with simple solutions. Not like this. Not like watching the person you'd built your life around slowly, deliberately tear it down for someone else's attention. Tomorrow, I'd meet Linda Hawthorne and learn exactly how long this had been going on. Tonight, I'd sit in the dark and mourn the marriage that had died so gradually I'd almost missed the funeral. But first, I had some research to do. The Starbucks on 5th Street was busy enough to provide cover for a conversation that could destroy 2 marriages. I arrived 10 minutes early, choosing a corner table where we could speak privately, and ordered coffee I didn't want just to have something to do with my hands. Linda Hawthorne walked in at exactly 9 a.m., and I recognized her immediately despite having met her only briefly at that Christmas party. Tall, elegant, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a perfect chignon. She wore a navy blazer that probably cost more than my car payment, and carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted her place in the world. Until now, maybe. She spotted me immediately. I was the only man sitting alone, clutching a coffee cup like a lifeline, and walked over with measured steps. "Mr. Chen," she extended a manicured hand. "Thank you for calling." "Thank you for coming. Can I get you something?" "Just coffee, black." I returned with her drink, and we sat in silence for a moment, 2 strangers united by the common experience of betrayal. She studied my face with intelligent brown eyes, and I had the uncomfortable feeling of being evaluated. "How long have you known?" she asked finally. "Known for certain. Since last night. Suspected. About 3 months." She nodded slowly. "Richard's been having affairs for 15 years. This isn't his first." The casual way she said it hit me like a slap. 15 years? And you've stayed? I've stayed because I chose my battles carefully. College girls who lasted a semester, secretaries who transferred to other departments, women who understood their place in the larger picture. Her voice carried no emotion, just cold pragmatism. "Your wife is different." "How?" "She thinks she's going to replace me." Linda pulled out her phone and showed me a series of screenshots. Text messages between Melissa and someone listed as M in her contacts. "I can't wait until we don't have to sneak around anymore." "Soon. Linda's getting older. She doesn't understand what I need. When you leave her, I want the house in the Hamptons. I stared at the messages, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. How did you get these? Richard's careless with his phone. Always has been. Usually his affairs burn out before they become problematic. This one, she gestured at the screen. This one has been planning my replacement for months. Why are you showing me this? Linda's smile was sharp as winter. Because, Mr. Chen, I think it's time we reminded our spouses that actions have consequences. We spent the next hour sharing intelligence like generals planning a campaign. Linda had been documenting Richard's affairs for years. Not out of hurt, she claimed, but out of practicality. Prenups could be complicated, but adultery clauses were straightforward. The difference this time, she explained, is that your wife has convinced Richard that I'm the obstacle to their happiness. She's pushed him to be bolder, more reckless. Last week she suggested he should ask for a divorce. What did he say? He said he'd think about it. 23 years of marriage, and he'd think about it. For the first time, emotion cracked through her composed exterior. I built his career, managed his social connections, raised his children. I made him into the man your wife finds so attractive, and she thinks she can just step into my life. I thought about Melissa's new clothes, her sudden interest in expensive restaurants, the way she'd started talking about our future in terms that seemed to involve a much larger bank account than mine. What do you want to do about it? Linda's smile returned, colder than before. I want to educate them about the real world. Richard thinks he can trade me in for a younger model and keep his lifestyle. Your wife thinks she can steal a husband and inherit his success. They're both about to learn how wrong they are. She outlined her plan with the precision of someone who'd been thinking about this for a long time. Richard's company had strict policies about relationships between supervisors and subordinates. His position on several nonprofit boards would be compromised by a messy divorce involving an affair with an employee, his social standing, his country club memberships, his carefully cultivated reputation. All of it could disappear with the right pressure applied at the right moment. And Melissa? I asked. Your wife has been accepting expensive gifts from a superior while seeking promotion. That's textbook quid pro quo harassment, regardless of whether she initiated it. Her HR department will have no choice but to terminate her, and her reputation in the industry will be finished. I should have felt satisfaction at the thought of consequences finally catching up with them. Instead, I felt hollow. This wasn't the life I'd imagined when I'd proposed to Melissa on the beach in Cabo, when she'd cried happy tears and promised we'd face everything together. You don't have to do anything, Linda continued. Just don't warn her. Let me handle the rest. When? Richard's company has a board meeting next Friday. Several of his nonprofit colleagues will be there, along with the senior partners. I think that would be an appropriate time to share some information about his character. We exchanged contact information and agreed to meet again in a few days. As Linda gathered her purse and stood to leave, she paused. Mr. Chen, may I ask you something personal? Sure. Do you still love her? I thought about it, really thought about it. Did I love the woman who'd lied to my face last night? Who'd chosen another man's attention over our marriage? Who'd spent months planning a future that didn't include me? I love who she used to be, I said finally. But that person doesn't exist anymore. Linda nodded. Then this will be easier for you than I thought. After she left, I sat alone with my cold coffee, processing what I'd learned. My marriage wasn't just over, it had been over for months, and I'd been the only one who didn't know it. Melissa hadn't just been having an affair, she'd been auditioning for my replacement in her life. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. How about that beer tonight? You sounded rough yesterday. This time, I didn't hesitate. Yeah, I'll need several. I drove home to an empty house that felt like a museum of my former life. Everything was exactly as Melissa had left it. Her coffee cup in the sink, her magazine open on the counter, her shoes kicked off by the front door. Signs of a woman who expected to come home to a husband who'd be waiting with dinner and forgiveness. Instead, she'd find a man who finally understood the game she'd been playing. I spent the day researching Richard's company, his board positions, his social connections. Linda was right. He had a lot to lose. A messy divorce involving an affair with a subordinate would cost him professionally and socially. And Melissa, who'd been so focused on climbing the corporate ladder, would find herself blacklisted from every firm that valued its reputation. By evening, I'd made my decision. Not just about whether to go along with Linda's plan, but about what came after. This marriage was over, but I wasn't going to be the victim in its ending. Jake found me at Murphy's Tavern, 3 beers into what was shaping up to be a long night. He slid into the booth across from me, studying my face with the concern of someone who'd known me since college. Okay, talk. What's going on? So I told him. Everything. The late nights, the new clothes, the business dinners that weren't business. The way Melissa had changed from my partner into a stranger who saw me as an obstacle to her ambitions. The phone call to Linda, the coffee meeting, the plan for revenge. Jake listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. Jesus, Dave. I'm sorry. I had no idea it was that bad. I didn't want anyone to know. Stupid pride, I guess. What are you going to do? I took a long drink of beer, tasting the bitterness that seemed to define everything lately. I'm going to let Linda destroy them both, and then I'm going to disappear. Disappear? New job, new city, new life. I've been thinking about it all day. There's nothing keeping me here except memories of a woman who doesn't exist anymore. Jake was quiet for a moment. That seems pretty extreme. You know what's extreme? Planning to steal someone's husband while lying to your own? Spending months building a relationship with another man while pretending your marriage is just going through a rough patch. I set down my beer harder than necessary. She made her choice. Now I'm making mine. We drank in comfortable silence after that, two old friends sharing the kind of evening that marks the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Around us, the tavern filled with its usual Friday night crowd, couples on dates, groups of friends celebrating the weekend, normal people living normal lives. I envied them their simplicity. By the time I got home, it was nearly midnight. Melissa's car was in the driveway, and lights were on in our bedroom. For a moment, I considered sleeping in the guest room, avoiding the conversation that would inevitably come, but I was tired of avoiding things. She was in bed reading when I walked in, wearing the silk pajamas I'd bought her for her birthday. She looked up with a smile that seemed almost genuine. "How was your night?" she asked. "Educational? Yours?" "Long. Richard and I worked until almost 11 on the Morrison proposal. I think we made real progress." The lie came so easily, with such practiced sincerity, that I almost admired her skill. Almost. "I'm sure you did," I said, heading for the bathroom. "David?" Her voice was softer now, uncertain. "Are you okay? You seem different." I paused in the doorway, looking back at the woman I'd promised to love for better or worse. She looked smaller in our big bed, younger without her makeup, almost like the person I'd fallen in love with. "I'm fine," I said, "just tired." But as I brushed my teeth, I caught my reflection in the mirror and saw something new in my eyes. Not hurt or anger, but something colder, something final. The man who'd begged for his wife's attention was gone. In his place was someone who understood that love without respect was just elaborate self-destruction, and I was done destroying myself for someone who'd already moved on. Monday morning brought the kind of autumn rain that made everything look gray and defeated. I watched from our kitchen window as Melissa hurried to her car, briefcase in one hand, umbrella in the other, phone pressed to her ear. Even from a distance, I could see her smile, the animated way she gestured as she talked. To him, obviously. She'd been on the phone when I'd gotten up, whispering in the bathroom with the shower running to mask her voice. When she'd emerged, she'd been bright and cheerful, chattering about her busy day while avoiding my eyes. "I'll probably be late again tonight," she'd said, kissing my cheek with lips that felt cold. "Big presentation tomorrow." "That's of course," I'd replied, and she'd paused, something flickering across her face at my tone. But she was too focused on her new life to examine the old one too closely. My phone rang as her car disappeared around the corner. Linda's name appeared on the screen. "Good morning, Mr. Chen. I hope you had a pleasant weekend." "As pleasant as it could be under the circumstances. You?" Illuminating. Richard spent Saturday afternoon shopping for jewelry. Expensive jewelry. Not for me, I'm afraid. Her voice carried dark amusement. "He's planning something special for your wife." I felt that familiar cold sensation in my stomach. "What kind of something?" "He's booked a weekend at the Four Seasons in the city. Presidential suite. He told me it was a business conference, but the reservation is under both their names." The coffee in my mouth turned bitter. "When?" "This Friday through Sunday. The same weekend as his nephew's wedding, which we're supposed to attend together." Linda's laugh was sharp. "He's planning to tell me tomorrow that he can't make the wedding due to a last-minute business emergency." I set down my mug, processing this new level of betrayal. It wasn't just a fare anymore. It was a complete life replacement. "Have you decided what you want to do?" "Oh yes, I've been very busy this weekend. Would you be available for lunch today? I have some things to show you." We met at a small French restaurant downtown, the kind of place where business deals were made over expensive wine and quiet conversation. Linda was already seated when I arrived, looking perfectly composed in a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down. "I hope you don't mind, but I took the liberty of ordering wine. We're going to need it." She'd brought a leather portfolio, which she opened to reveal a collection of photographs, documents, and printed emails. The evidence of my wife's affair laid out like a legal brief. "I hired a private investigator," she said simply. "Someone very discreet, very thorough. This is what he found." The photographs hit me first. Melissa and Richard entering a hotel together. Melissa and Richard at a restaurant across town, holding hands across the table. Melissa and Richard kissing in the parking garage of her office building. But it was the documents that truly destroyed me. Credit card receipts for expensive dinners, jewelry, lingerie, all charged to an account I'd never seen. Hotel reservations going back 3 months, and emails between them that read like love letters from people planning a future together. "She's been living a double life," Linda said quietly, complete with her own credit cards, her own apartment fund, her own escape plan. Apartment fund? Linda showed me bank statements for an account in Melissa's name. Regular deposits, growing balance, enough money to start over somewhere new, with someone new. "She's been skimming money from your joint account," Linda continued. "Small amounts, but consistent, building her freedom fund while you paid the mortgage and utilities." I stared at the numbers, feeling something break inside me that I hadn't even known was still intact. This wasn't just an affair, it was a calculated dismantling of our life together. "There's more," Linda said, and I wasn't sure I could handle more. She showed me text messages between Melissa and her sister discussing divorce strategy. Messages to her best friend Sarah about finally being happy with someone who appreciates me. Messages to a real estate agent about apartments in the city. "She's been planning to leave you for months," Linda said. "The only thing that's been holding her back is timing. She wants to be sure Richard will leave me before she leaves you." "And now?" "Now Richard thinks he's ready to make the leap. The weekend at the Four Seasons is his test run, seeing how it feels to play house with his new life." I drank wine I couldn't taste and tried to process the magnitude of the deception. Every conversation we'd had about our future, every time she'd reassured me that we were just going through a rough patch, every moment of intimacy we'd shared, all of it had been lies. "What's your plan?" I asked. Linda's smile was razor sharp. "Richard's company is having their quarterly board meeting Thursday afternoon. Several major clients will be there, along with the senior partners and board members from his nonprofit organizations. I'm going to attend as his supportive wife. And I'm going to share some information about his character and judgment. Specifically, his relationship with a subordinate and the potential legal liabilities that creates for the company." She outlined the plan with military precision. Richard's affair with Melissa violated multiple company policies and created significant legal exposure. His position on charity boards would be compromised by the scandal. His reputation in their social circle would be destroyed by the public humiliation. "But the real masterpiece," Linda continued, "will be the timing. I'm going to wait until he introduces your wife as his weekend companion before I reveal that I know everything." "You're going to the hotel?" "I'm going to the hotel, with the private investigator, a photographer, and divorce papers that will freeze all our assets pending a full investigation of marital misconduct." Her eyes glittered with anticipation. "Your wife thinks she's going to spend the weekend playing princess in a luxury suite. Instead, she's going to spend it explaining her relationship to hotel security and my attorney." I should have felt vindicated, should have felt justice in the elaborate destruction of their carefully planned betrayal. Instead, I felt empty, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart from a great distance. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Nothing, just don't warn her. Let her walk into it blind, the way she's been keeping you blind for months." We finished lunch in relative silence, two people united by betrayal and bound by revenge. As we prepared to leave, Linda reached across the table and touched my hand. "Mr. Chen, David, I know this is difficult, but they made their choice when they decided to treat us like obstacles instead of people. Sometimes the only way to regain your dignity is to make sure they lose theirs." I drove home through the gray afternoon, past the coffee shop where Melissa and I used to meet for weekend breakfast, past the park where we'd gotten engaged, past all the landmarks of a life that had been ending while I was still trying to save it. The house felt different now, not like a home, but like a stage set for a play that was almost over. I walked through rooms filled with our shared history, seeing it all through new eyes. The couch we'd picked out together, where she'd been texting him while I watched TV, the kitchen table where we'd planned vacations she'd been hoping to take with someone else, the bedroom where she'd been lying next to me while dreaming of lying next to him. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "How are you holding up?" I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Ask me again next week." That evening, Melissa came home late again, full of apologies and explanations about client meetings and deadline pressures. She was animated, glowing, talking faster than usual, the way people do when they're trying to fill silence with noise. "How was your day?" she asked, finally pausing in her monologue about office politics. "Quiet," I said. "Productive." She studied my face, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the woman I'd married, someone who used to know me well enough to sense when something was wrong. "You seem distant lately," she said carefully. "Do I?" "Yes. Is everything okay? Are we okay?" The question hung in the air between us, loaded with irony. She was asking if we were okay while planning to leave me for another man, asking if everything was all right while living a double life funded by money she'd stolen from our joint account. "We're exactly what we've always been," I said, and something in my tone made her step back. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm tired, Melissa. It's been a long day." She nodded, accepting the dismissal, and I watched her retreat to the bedroom where she'd probably spend the next hour texting Richard about their upcoming weekend together. I stayed in the living room, surrounded by the remnants of our life together, and tried to remember the last time I'd been truly happy. Not content, not comfortable, but genuinely happy. It had been months, maybe longer. So gradual was the erosion of our relationship that I'd almost missed its complete destruction. But not anymore. In 4 days, Melissa would wake up thinking she was about to start her new life. Instead, she'd discover that her old life and her new one were both over. And for the first time in months, I found myself looking forward to something. Thursday evening arrived with the weight of an execution date. I sat in my home office, pretending to work while listening to Melissa pack for her weekend of client meetings in the city. She was actually humming, as she folded clothes into her overnight bag. "I wish you could come with me," she called from the bedroom, her voice bright with false regret. "But you know how boring these corporate retreats can be." "Devastating," I replied, not looking up from my computer screen. She appeared in the doorway wearing a new dress I'd never seen before, something red and elegant that made her look like she was dressed for seduction rather than spreadsheets. Her makeup was perfect, her hair styled in loose waves that had taken her an hour to achieve. "How do I look?" she asked, doing a little turn. "Like you're going to get everything you want," I said, and she beamed at what she thought was a compliment. "I hope so. This could be the weekend that changes everything for us." The irony was so thick I could taste it. She was right. This weekend would change everything, just not in the way she imagined. "David?" She stepped closer, and for a moment her expression softened into something that almost looked like guilt. "I know things have been difficult between us lately, but I want you to know that I love you. Whatever happens, whatever changes come, that won't change." The lie was so smooth, so practiced, that I almost believed she believed it herself. Maybe in her mind she did love me, the way you love a comfortable old sweater you're about to donate to charity. "I love you too," I said, because it was easier than the truth. She kissed me goodbye, her lips soft and warm and completely hollow. I watched from the window as Richard's silver BMW pulled into our driveway, watched my wife hurry toward her new life with an eagerness that cut deeper than any of the previous betrayals. Richard didn't get out of the car, didn't even look toward the house where the husband of his mistress stood watching. He was already erasing me from the narrative, treating me like a problem that would solve itself. My phone rang 30 minutes after they'd left. Linda's voice was crisp and businesslike. "They've just checked into the Four Seasons. Presidential suite as expected. My investigator is in position, and I've confirmed that Richard told his assistant he'd be unreachable until Monday morning." "When do you make your move?" "Tomorrow evening. I want them to have time to get comfortable, to feel secure in their deception. The deeper they sink into their fantasy, the more devastating it will be when reality arrives." After we hung up, I found myself alone in a house that felt like a mausoleum. Every room held memories of the woman who was currently celebrating her escape from our life together. I walked through our home like a ghost, touching surfaces she'd chosen, looking at photographs of trips we'd taken when we still enjoyed each other's company. In our bedroom, I found the clothes she'd rejected for her romantic weekend. Apparently, the first 3 outfits hadn't been quite seductive enough for her business meetings. The thought of her standing in front of our mirror, choosing the perfect dress to wear for another man, made something cold and final settle in my chest. I slept in the guest room that night, not because I couldn't bear to sleep in our bed, but because I didn't want to contaminate my last night of ignorance with the scent of her perfume on the pillows. Friday crawled by with the sluggish pace of a death march. I worked from home, handling routine IT issues while checking my phone obsessively for updates from Linda. The silence stretched through the afternoon until finally, at 6 p.m., my phone rang. "It's time," Linda said simply. "Are you ready for this to be over?" "I've been ready for months. I just didn't know it." Richard thinks he's taking your wife to dinner at Le Bernardin tonight. Instead, he's going to find me waiting in the hotel lobby with some very interesting documents and several witnesses. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Linda would arrive at the Four Seasons with her attorney, her private investigator, and a photographer. She'd wait until Richard and Melissa returned from dinner, then serve Richard with divorce papers in front of the hotel staff and any guests who happened to be present. The papers would detail his affair, freeze their assets, and begin the process of destroying his career and reputation. Melissa would discover that her romantic weekend had become evidence in a divorce proceeding that would make her unemployable in their industry. "What happens after?" I asked. "After, your wife discovers that actions have consequences, and you discover that you're free." I spent the evening at Murphy's Tavern, nursing beers and waiting for my phone to ring. Jake found me there around 9, sliding into the booth across from me with the concerned expression of someone who'd been worried about a friend. "Shouldn't you be home?" he asked. "Melissa's out of town." "Business trip?" Something in my tone made him study my face more carefully. "Dave, what's going on? You've been strange all week." So I told him. Everything. The affair, the evidence, Linda's plan, the fact that my marriage was ending tonight in a hotel lobby across town. Jake listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each revelation. "Jesus," he said when I finished. "I'm sorry, man. I had no idea it was that bad." "It's not bad anymore," I said, surprised by the truth of it. "It's just over." My phone rang at 10:47 p.m. Linda's voice was calm but satisfied. "It's done." "How did it go?" "Better than I expected. They were holding hands in the lobby when I approached them, very romantic, very public. Richard's face when he saw me was worth every penny I paid the investigator." "And Melissa?" "Your wife tried to claim she was there for business meetings. Rather difficult to explain when she was wearing a cocktail dress and holding her boss's hand at 11 p.m. on a Friday night." Linda's laugh was sharp. "She's currently in the hotel bar, crying into a martini. Richard is upstairs packing his things under the supervision of hotel security." "It's really over." "It's really over. Your wife will be home tomorrow, and she'll have quite a story to tell. I suggest you be prepared for drama." After Linda hung up, I sat in the tavern's dim light, feeling something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not happiness. That would come later, maybe, but the simple relief of knowing where I stood. Jake was still there, nursing his own beer and watching me with concern. "What are you going to do now?" he asked. "Wait for her to come home, listen to whatever story she tells, then start my new life." "You sound different." "I am different. The man who begged for his wife's attention died tonight. I'm not sure who's taking his place yet, but it's someone who won't settle for being treated like an inconvenience." I drove home through empty streets, past the landmarks of my former life, feeling like I was seeing everything for the first time. The house that had felt like a prison now felt like a way station, somewhere to rest before moving on to whatever came next. I slept deeply that night, better than I had in months, and when I woke up Saturday morning, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Hope. Not hope that my marriage could be saved. That was beyond saving. But hope that I could save myself. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. Saturday morning arrived with brilliant sunshine that seemed to mock the darkness of what was coming. I made coffee and sat on our back deck, enjoying what would probably be my last peaceful morning in the house Melissa and I had bought together 3 years ago. She'd be home soon, full of explanations and excuses, ready to spin last night's disaster into something that was somehow my fault. I'd listened to her lies for months. Today, I'd finally tell her some truths. My phone had been buzzing since dawn with text messages from her. "David, I can explain everything. Please don't believe whatever Linda told you. Richard and I were set up. This is all a misunderstanding. I'm coming home. We need to talk." I deleted each message without responding. Let her wonder what I knew, what I'd figured out, how much of her carefully constructed deception had crumbled in that hotel lobby. At 11:30 a.m., her car pulled into our driveway. I watched from the kitchen window as she sat behind the wheel for several minutes, probably rehearsing whatever story she'd decided would work best. When she finally emerged, she looked nothing like the confident woman who'd left yesterday evening. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, her expensive dress wrinkled like she'd slept in it. She clutched her overnight bag like a shield and walked toward our front door with the hesitant steps of someone approaching an execution. I opened the door before she could use her key. "Hello, Melissa." She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes, and for a moment I saw genuine fear in her expression. Not fear of me, but fear of consequences finally catching up with her. "David, thank God. I've been trying to call you all morning." "I know. I got your messages." Then you know this is all a huge misunderstanding. Linda Hawthorne is a jealous, vindictive woman who caught you holding hands with her husband in a hotel lobby at 11 p.m. on a Friday night. I stepped aside to let her enter. Come in, we should talk. She walked into our living room like she was entering foreign territory, setting down her bag and perching on the edge of the couch we'd picked out together. I remained standing, looking down at the woman I'd shared 8 years of my life with. David, please sit. Let me explain. I'm comfortable standing. Go ahead. She took a shaky breath, delivering her rehearsed speech. Richard was mentoring her. The dinner was business. Linda had misunderstood everything. I waited until she finished. Creative story, I said, very detailed. It's the truth. I placed a manila folder on the table and spread photographs. Melissa kissing Richard, entering hotels, intimate dinners. Then bank statements showing money skimmed into her secret account. Printed emails and texts planning their future, her divorce strategy. Her face crumpled. How long have you known? Suspected months. Confirmed when I called Linda. You called his wife? While you held hands at Le Bernardin. She's been documenting his affairs for years. You just gave her perfect grounds. Melissa shrank into the couch. Richard loves me. He'll leave her. He's being served papers that will ruin him. You were just his latest crisis. The defiance drained away. You're leaving tonight, I said. Pack for a few weeks. We'll handle divorce logistics later. She cried. Real tears for herself. An hour later, suitcases in hand, she paused at the door. I still love you. No. You love the security. Love doesn't steal exit funds. She drove away. The house felt clean, unburdened. For the first time in months, the future felt like possibility.